Hello, welcome again to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and it's another time for another episode. Thank you for tuning in. Really thank you for the support, and especially in the vinyl community out there. Everyone that's watching, but on YouTube, I know there's a lot of us doing these similar type of videos, and I'm just glad to be part of it and sharing my collection with everyone out there. And it's all about finding out things that, hey, I didn't know that existed, or I didn't know that existed. And so today it's going to be a little bit different. This is the first episode where I'm actually going to be talking about some of my CD collection. And it's because it's a band that I love, but I don't have any vinyl from. I never collected any of their vinyl. And I have a lot of interesting CDs. And the band is Cheap Trick. So I've got a big collection to talk to, a range of US, Canadian, early, reissue. We've got a single to talk about, some imports, and a lot of interesting things. I'm sure this is not a complete collection, but I'm going to talk about my personal Cheap Trick compact disc collection today on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. This is the first Cheap Trick album. It originally came out in 1977, as can be indicated by this, and also along here, this is a reissued version. This came out in 1998. You can also tell by the back cover. So this is an American edition. That's what it looks like on the side. This is actually the only Cheap Trick CD I have that is remastered. I'll show you what's inside of here. Inside there, it's an advertisement for other albums available, not all of them, tellingly. The CD itself is pretty cool because it's got the, I'll just turn it around here and show you. It's got the, what looks like the early orange Epic label that used to be on the records. It's got a lot of extra songs on it. And like I said, this is the only one that I have that is like that. So it's the front and the back cover, and just quite a long write-up on the first Cheap Trick album. Like I said, I'd already gotten all of these CDs by the time that the reissues started happening. And it also has to be said, the reissues only happened for select Cheap Trick albums. It wasn't like the entire catalog got reissued, which is a shame. Second Cheap Trick album, In Color, came out in 1977. This is a pretty typical 80s CBS issue with a nice price sticker, something very familiar, I'm sure, to most of us that have started buying CDs in the 80s. That's typical Epic spine. Cheap Trick in color and in black and white, of course. That's the dichotomy of Cheap Trick. They always do that. They would have Robin Zander and Tom Peterson on the front cover, Bunny Carlos and Rick Nielsen on the back. So, and of course, you can't look at the whole thing. That wouldn't be Cheap Trick. Turn it upside down. This is all that's inside this CD version, is this folder here. And the CD itself is just a typical Epic issue CD. Next up, this is one of the reasons I'm doing this particular show. It's a really early CD issue of the third Cheap Trick album, Heaven Tonight. And I hope that this shows up. This is a Canadian edition, and I hope you can see this. I'm going to try and hold it up to the light different ways. I can't tell until I finish whether it comes out, but it's raised letters along here. It says CBS here, and then it has information about CBS Records Canada and their address in Ontario. This appeared on cassettes all the time in the 80s, Canadian CBS cassettes. So I'm no stranger to seeing it on the backside of cassettes. But this one, I found this used. It was the first time I seen it on a CD, which tells me this is an early edition of Heaven Tonight. Here's the back cover, and a lot of the Canadian CBS CDs had this boxy thing going on. They didn't reproduce the graphics. They just kind of picked a color that was sympathetic with the front cover and just put a little bit of information on here. So it's very minimal, but yet at the same time, I'm kind of fascinated by it because I'm intrigued by the earliest issues of CDs. I remember CDs, I first became aware of them sometime around 1985, and I just remember them being extremely expensive. The CD itself looks just as if an American edition would, and it's actually quite scratched, although it doesn't skip. And I may get a remastered edition just to have a playable version, but I'm not getting rid of that version of Heaven Tonight because it's really, it's really old. Next up, of course, this was the big album for Cheap Trick, At Budokan. And this is just a Canadian Columbia House issue, which I would have got sometime in the 90s, but of course based on the original CD issue. That's what the CD looked like. The back cover, again, it's just that boxy look. I'm going to refer to it as the boxy look. This got the lyrics to the songs in very small print. None of the cool stuff that was inside the record. Dream Police, 1979, the next Cheap Trick album. This is an American CD, although I did buy it in Canada. It had an import sticker on it, and this is when they started putting those silver dog bone shaped things that, as you can see, I would need to get a little goo gone to get rid of it. I actually hate those things. CD itself, nothing out of the ordinary, typical Epic CD. So there it is, the front and back cover. Very minimal for credits, not a lot in here at all. Next up is the first of the import CDs I have, which I think there's 3 of them altogether. This is something that actually wasn't available on CD for many, many years. This is Found All the Parts. This came out in 1980 originally as part of a 10-inch series of records called New Disc, N-U Disc, that Epic put out. Cheap Trick's the only band that I like, that I know of, that put out an EP. It was also put out on cassette, but it wasn't issued on CD until much later. I do remember that at one point the band themselves had, it's only got 4 songs on it, they had 4 songs, those 4 songs available for download on their website. This is from Sony Music in Japan. You could tell that looks a little different, but you can really tell over here. It's probably as good a point to mention that it's a real shame with Cheap Trick, because that's a band, they've got an embarrassment of material that ended up on soundtrack albums and B-sides, all sorts of extra songs, cover songs that they did. For instance, their version of John Lennon's Cold Turkey. You could do at least an album, maybe even a double CD set, back in the day when CDs actually sold of the unreleased Cheap Trick material from the movies like Spring Break, Up the Creek, Top Gun, Caddyshack 2, I think they had. Like, just, it's endless. But that has yet to be done anyway. I'm sure someone out there has put together the... So that's the New Disc logo, as you can see. They reproduced it for the CD itself. It's Found All the Parts. Also in 1980, my personal favorite Cheap Trick album, All Shook Up. It's not one of their better known albums, which is a shame. I think this is a fantastic Cheap Trick album. This is just the regular US CD that would have come out sometime in the 80s, so there's not a lot going on with this. It has been reissued. I believe they reissued it with the Found All the Parts EP on it, but that's not how I came to have them. That's what the CD looks like. A lot of great songs on this album. Stop This Game, Can't Stop It, But I'm Gonna Try. And some good song titles. Great song titles. High Priest of Rhythmic Noise. I Love You Honey, But I Hate Your Friends. Just fun stuff. And just really well put together. This album was one of the fruitions of their Beatles obsession. They actually had George Martin produce this. And it went gold, but it didn't do as well as some of their previous albums, which I don't really understand. You can see on the front cover, it's 1980. They started going for a little bit of a new wave look. Whether that was successful or not, it's not for me to say. 1982, the next Cheap Trick album, One on One, produced by Roy Thomas Baker. This is a regular CD version that would have come out in the 80s on US Epic. This album also was the first one that Tom Peterson didn't play on. John Brandt had joined the band, but I don't think he actually played bass on the album. I think Nielsen played all the bass on it. That's the CD itself. The fold out actually, well, it actually folds out. So at first fold, that's what you get. And then You get this sort of four square photo of the band and a little bit underneath, and then over here you get a little tiny bit of credits, but not much. Hold it up there. It's one-on-one. I don't know how this is coming out. I hope these are visible. Cheap Trick were extremely prolific band, a ton of albums, almost one a year. 1983, Next Position Please. That album cover is sort of, I think, a takeoff of Springsteen's Born to Run. I didn't know that for many years after the fact. This is a U.S. edition. Although it is interesting to note that it says trademarks of CBS incorporated throughout the world except in Canada, where there are trademarks of CBS Canada Limited. So even on the American editions, they still mention CBS Records Canada. It's a minor thing. It's a lovely sound, isn't it? This CD actually has a lot of songs on it. I think it has more songs on it than the record or cassette had. I'm not 100% sure how that went. So there's the front and back cover all together. It's interesting that Rick Nielsen's only on the back cover, unless you count his trademark double neck guitar. There are very minimal credits inside of here. 1985, the next Cheap Trick album, Standing on the Edge. I don't think this is really a great album, but it does have one of my all-time favorite Cheap Trick songs on it, and that's Tonight It's You, a song that was a minor hit but should have done much better. So you can see right there, this is not a US or Canadian version. It's an import. Everything about this looks different. We'll start, front and back cover. Front cover is the same, back cover is different. That's very different, the CD itself. And inside, picture of the group. Some credits, not a lot of credits. A little bit more. So the question is, and I have to dig this up every time I look at this CD, where this actually came from. I'm thinking it's German, but it could be from the Netherlands. And I think I come to the same conclusion every time. I don't actually know where it came from. It's definitely European. And I noticed this on some of the Cheap Trick albums. I don't know if this is the first one, but inside the credits it says 2000 minus 15, which I'm assuming is the year 2000. Take off 15 is 1985, which is when this album came out. Standing on the Edge. So a lot of albums, just bang, 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 they came out with them. So far, I think that 1981 is the only year they didn't have a studio album so far. 1984 as well. But in both of those years, they contributed to movie soundtracks. Next up, this is another really rare CD in my collection. This is The Doctor. Came out in 1986, another Canadian edition with the raised CBS information on the side here, like I said. I hope that comes out on this video. I hope I got the lighting right for that. The same boxy CBS Canada. Because eventually, a lot of releases from the States that came into Canada were just American releases with a sticker over it, but this is back when they actually made homegrown, if you like, versions of it. I got this one off eBay many years ago. The writing is a little bit faded on this one, but again, other than that, it looks like a regular CBS CD from its time. And this also has lyrics and all of the credits. Not a great album. There are some good songs on it, like Take Me to the Top, It's Only Love. Those are great songs. Terrible production on it, in my opinion. 1988, Lap of Luxury. This was a big comeback album from Cheap Trick. It had their version of Elvis's Don't Be Cruel, and most notably it had their #1 song, The Flame. This is just a regular US edition. Back cover. For an album that was big, it was quite big, there's really very little in here. It's the CD itself. And that's the front and back cover together. The band and what looks like were happier days. They didn't know when this album came out, obviously, that it was going to be a hit for them. And next up, 1990, Busted. I really don't like this album much at all. To me, there aren't any gotta have songs on it. This is a Canadian edition. This is for the first time they did like a customized CD for this, coming off of a successful album. It's not all that different than Lap of Luxury, but to me it just didn't make it. Not as many memorable songs on it, and there was no Can't Stop Falling in Love was a hit, but it was never a favorite of mine. Put a big picture of the band here, very flashy looking. Grunge was just on the doorstep. Is that good or bad? And that's Busted. 1991, for the first time, at least in North America, there probably were compilations released elsewhere, Epic deemed it fit to release a greatest hits album, in this case, the greatest hits. See, there's a "the" there. That's important. And it's in purple. That's how you really know it's important. That's the back cover again. It's not a bad start if you wanted to get somebody into Cheap Trick, but it's not the greatest. The only new thing on here was their cover of the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. That was the first song on it. And like I said, it's a decent collection of Cheap Trick material. Front and back cover there. Just various, there's no write-up or anything, it's just the songs, who wrote them, what album they came from, mixed with pictures of the group. It says what was also available at the time. In 1993, Cheap Trick put out Budokan 2. Because, of course, the original Budokan album only had 10 songs on it. Really 9 when you consider the fact that Hello There and Goodnight are the same song. It's just a reprise. But obviously they didn't just do those songs in concert. So this is the balance of those songs that came out. And this is another import. This is a European import. It was also a cutout. That's why it's cut out a part of that. And since the entire concert was eventually put out, this became hard to find. So I had to resort to eBay or Amazon to pick up this copy, and I got this European copy, which is fine. Front and back cover. Just pictures of the crowd in there. And what I find is kind of neat about this is that they're very conscious of the fact this picks up where the first Budokan starts off. So it starts at track 11, even though it's only track 1 on here. But it's that's the balance of those songs. 1994, Cheap Trick's next album, Woke Up With a Monster. This is their only album that was on Warner Brothers Records. It was not successful. There are some great songs on here. Tell Me Everything in particular is a great song. Should have been a hit, but again, it was the grunge era, so melodic rock music wasn't likely to make much of inroad. It's a Canadian Columbia House edition as well. If you're scared of clowns, check that out. I don't know what in the heck Robin Zander's wearing here. It's furry. And they continue this sort of clown motif all the way through the album. And some more pictures here. And then, in 1996, Cheap Trick put out this box set. I'm going to hold it back here a little bit. This comes in a book form. I got this from Columbia House where they had a sale on their box sets. This is called Sex, America, Cheap Trick, and this is a really, really good box set. And a good overall introduction to Cheap Trick. It's very thorough. Try to show you here. Each disc has one of the band members on it. There's quite a lengthy booklet in here. It tells their story quite well. And I was very glad to get it. I learned a lot about Cheap Trick from reading this, so this is worth picking up. And even though it has a lot of unreleased material on it, and like I said earlier, there's still a lot of unreleased material. They could conceivably do another box set of all of it, but they probably won't. I can't see there being a commercial need for it. Next up from Cheap Trick, they signed to a company called Red Ant Records, which went into bankruptcy almost immediately. This is actually one of very few CD singles that I still have. I had a few more, but I kept this one. This came with... Actually, let me rewind this. Okay. This is the album itself. It came out in 1997. And like their first album 20 years previous, this is self-titled. And this is an excellent album. This 1997 self-titled Cheap Trick album. That's what the disc itself looks like. And inside the album, this is very 90s grungy looking pictures of the band. They're kind of dressed like slobs, and I really, anybody that knows me, I was never into the whole grunge thing, especially because of what it represented to, you know, if you liked the music, that was great, but boy, if you liked stuff from the 80s, you were shunned. I know, I was in high school and starting post-secondary education at the time. And even good bands succumbed to that theory that they couldn't look good anymore, which is ridiculous. Anyway, this is a good album. And when I bought it, it came with this CD single, which has 2 songs on it, Baby Talk and Brontosaurus, that weren't on the album itself, and came with the same sessions. That's what the CD itself looked like for the single. And it also contained this order form with it. Please send fan service tour dates and Trickfest information. There's no mention of cheaptrick.com. There's no mention of a website on here at all. So this is very, very tail end of the pre-internet fan club ordering information. Next up in my collection, anyway, is Music for Hangovers. Great title. This came out in 1999, and this came from a tour that Cheap Trick did where they played primarily their first 3 albums, as you can see on there. Budokan, Cheap Trick, In Color, Heaven Tonight. And there's also a few other songs on here from other albums, like If You Want My Love from One on One is on here. Everything else comes from the first 3 studio albums, I believe. No, Dream Police is on here too. But anyway, this is a really cool sounding live album. I enjoy it. That's what the CD looks like. That's what the front and back cover looks like. Right there. There's a write-up in here by somebody who I kind of like his taste in music, even though I don't like his own music. That would be Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins. And the credits. That's Music for Hangovers. Not a lot of... There's only a handful of new albums here, but I got a lot more CDs to go through. In the year 2000, Sony put this album out, Authorized Greatest Hits. I guess the band had more of a say in this one. This is sort of a follow-up to The Greatest Hits, which came out in 91. And there's the spine, and there's the back cover, among other things that are different on this album. There's they put Everything Works If You Let It on here, which is another soundtrack song from Roadie. They put a live version of The Flame. There's a live version of I Can't Take It. And there's also That 70s song based on In the Street, which, of course, most people know was the theme to That 70s Show, which kind of brought Cheap Trick back to a slightly younger audience, because people that watched That 70s Show, which is a good show, heard Cheap Trick every week. Now they're advertising cheaptrick.com. Not much else inside here, a little write-up and some credits. There are a lot of compilations that I don't have, never bothered getting, so if I'm sure I'm missing some. The next studio album from Cheap Trick, this is Special One. This came out in 2003 on their own label, Big 3 Records. This is actually a limited edition version of this, because this came with a DVD, a bonus DVD. If you can see that's the band members right there, and there are the song titles. Not much in here except for that. And came with, this is what the album looked like. If we flip it over, it's got a bonus DVD on it, which has some videos on it. And then it's got this advertising other Cheap Trick music that's available. It doesn't say what, it doesn't actually say what's on the DVD, but I know it's got, for one thing, it's got the video for Woke Up With a Monster. I think it's a live version of, it's Hello Kitties or Hot Love, something from the first album. Anyway, I wasn't expecting that when I got it, so that was a nice little bonus. Next up, depending on where you get it, it's got different years on it. This is a European version from SPV Steamhammer Records, so it says 2004 on it, even though it was recorded in 1999. This is Silver. It's a 2-disc live album that was recorded on Cheap Trick's 25th or Silver anniversary. And this is a really, really cool album. This has appearances from John Brandt, who was on bass in some of the 80s. They bring him back for some of his era songs like Tonight It's You, Take Me to the Top. They bring up Robin Zander's daughter for a song, Time Will Let You Know, which is on his 1993 solo album. And it's really, really well done. And I think there's something from every album on here. They leave no stone unturned. This has one of these flippity-floppity cases here, to use a technical term, flippity-floppity. This is one of those booklets that's a little stubborn to remove without bending it a little bit. So that's always good. Inside, this little silver thing, reflective thing going on here. So that's Silver. 2004. By this time, Sony Music was releasing several of these Essential series of albums. And this is the Cheap Trick entry. I got the 2-disc set. It's also available in a single disc set. Old style Epic logo on the CD on both sides. By now we're down to a very, very limited number of releases that they're advertising, because so many of them have sadly gone out of print, but that's the way things are going. The way of the world, to coin a phrase. Right up inside of here, a few other pages of information. 2006, they released another studio album called Rockford, named after, of course, their hometown of Rockford, Illinois. This is a digipack, which I'm not a big fan of, but I like the drawing on here. This has some good songs on it. This was once again on Big 3 Records. So this is what, very bright. I'm sure they did that so it would stand out in music stores. So they went with this animated looking thing for each of the band members. It's kind of cool. I like it. So that's Rockford. The next thing I have is, to date, the most recent Cheap Trick album. This is called The Latest. And something I've never found, I didn't get it when it first came out, I should have. The Cheap Trick actually put out an 8-track version of this album because they wanted to have the #1 selling something the particular week it came out, which I think is brilliant. And I have seen it online, but it's not cheap anymore. It was just a limited edition thing. It's kind of an interesting way that this album folds out. CD just kind of pops out of there. This has some good songs on it. Miss Tomorrow is a great song, among others. Next up is Cheap Trick, of course, lifelong Beatles fans. This came out in 2009. It's Cheap Trick Sgt. Pepper Live. They did the entire Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band live with an orchestra. It was actually co-produced by Jeff Emmerich, who was George Martin's engineer. He had worked with Cheap Trick before in the All Shook Up album. So this has all the songs in Sgt. Pepper's, and then at the end they do a medley of other Beatles songs. And they do it very well. New York Philharmonic, as well as a few other guests. Credits in here. And one more thing. This release that I have here came out in 2010. This is the complete Budokan concert. Finally in one place. Friday, April 28th, 1978. This has CD and DVD. So this has all the songs, and it also has a DVD with a few bonus videos from their return to Budokan in 2008. So that's the DVD. And that's the audio. That's the inside back. And front and the back cover. Pretty lengthy write-up in here. And that is my complete Cheap Trick CD collection. Like I said, I know I'm missing some compilations, but if I don't have them, it's because I haven't bothered to buy them. But if you only knew Cheap Trick from a few songs, I would definitely check them out because they do so many different styles of music, and they've got so much. They've pretty much got something for everybody. If you're into metal, they've got some harder rock sounding songs. Let's not get out of hand. Not strict metal, but really tough sounding songs. They write great pop sounding songs, power pop. I guess that's primarily what they're known for. They can do great ballads. They can do punk type of songs. They can get a little grungy. But overall, there's melodic. Robin Zander's probably one of the most bulletproof singers I know of. He still can pack a punch vocally and sing a variety of different styles. CheapTrick.com is their website, and you can check them out on Facebook and all the other social media as well. This is Tim Derling for Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Thank you for watching this Cheap Trick episode.